Hi listeners, Adam B. Levine here. Let's Talk Bitcoin is expanding from a twice-weekly show into a network. Don't worry, Andreas, Stephanie, and I will still be coming to you Tuesdays and Fridays, but in 2014 a whole bunch of new voices will be joining our quest for clarity, truth, and understanding. Over the next few weeks, we'll be sharing many test or pilot episodes with you of shows people would like to produce for your enjoyment, and the most popular show will win a 1,000 millibit prize. To vote for a particular show you like, visit that show's special page and send a 0.1 millibit tip to the address indicated in big bold letters. For each 0.1 millibit received, a vote will be tallied for that show. When the contest is over, all tips will be dispersed evenly to all applicants who submitted shows. This is to prevent someone from voting themselves the prize. The deadline to vote is midnight Pacific time on New Year's Eve. So those are the rules. To vote for this one, visit letstalkbitcoin.com/P3.
Hello, Let's Talk Bitcoin listeners. I'm Paul Boyer. This is the pilot episode of the new Mad Money Machine, The Bitcoin Show. I'd love to join the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast network. At the end of the show, if you like the show, please support it by voting. Each week, I expect to bring you lots of informative and fun segments. There's no reason why a show about Bitcoin can't be fun, is there? Including Bitcoin tools from the Tool Crib, news from the week in Bitcoin, including the market, and we'll play a round of the world's favorite game, Guru Roulette. Coming up on this episode, we'll have all those segments. Plus, we'll talk about how Bitcoin is a miracle for good in the world and how we need to be on guard against the evil threat. This will be the battle of the century. Who am I and what have I done? I've got a master's degree in electrical engineering from the Johns Hopkins University. I've worked in the IT industry for about 23 years. At one point, I obtained the Certified Information System Security Professional credential, but gave that up once they sent me the bill for next year's credential. The kinds of things I did: requirements analysis, systems engineering, prototype development, data analysis, tool development, information security consulting. At one point, I wrote an end-to-end encrypted email system. That was about 10 years ago. Wish I would have kept that one going. And how about this? I did GUI development for a toxicogenomics database website. In 2005, I started a podcast called The Mad Money Machine, all about investing. It made it to the top 5 in iTunes at one point. But along the way, I figured out that active investing was a losing proposition and that set it and forget it methodology was the way to go. And I found out that doing a show about investing each week was detrimental to my forget it capability. Eventually, I tapered off doing the investing show. I spent the year 2012 putting together a book about the U.S. Constitution. I've been a casual observer of Bitcoin since the beginning, but didn't acquire any Bitcoins until about 2012. Since owning them, I've been a devoted follower of Bitcoin and am convinced that Bitcoin is a miracle put here on earth to help good win its battle over evil, for freedom of the individual to win over the power of the few. Of course, we've got a long way yet to go and a lot of education yet to do, but we've got to fight the good fight and give Bitcoin a chance. Enough about me. Let's play a round of the world's favorite game, Guru Roulette. I've replaced the numbers on a roulette wheel with the names of Bitcoin gurus. I'll spin the wheel and roll the marble, and for the selected guru, give you a little background on their Bitcoin philosophy. So here we go. And the winner this time on the Mad Money Machine pilot episode is David Wu. David Wu is a foreign exchange and rates strategist at Bank of America / Merrill Lynch. And Joe Weisenthal at BusinessInsider.com said that Wu is one of the most genuinely brilliant minds on Wall Street. Here's what David Wu had to say about Bitcoin. We believe Bitcoin can become a major means of payment for e-commerce and may emerge as a serious competitor to traditional money transfer providers. As a medium of exchange, Bitcoin has clear potential for growth in our view. Well, Joe Weisenthal thinks that statement is huge. He says that Wu's analysis represents a top-flight mind at a major financial institution assessing it in a serious way and coming to the conclusion that it could be the real deal. So David Wu released a paper about Bitcoin from Bank of America / Merrill Lynch called Bitcoin, a First Assessment, where he made that statement. He talks about the fair value of Bitcoin being about $1,300 based upon a market cap of $15 billion. He talks about what is Bitcoin and some advantages and disadvantages of it. Advantages are that as a medium of exchange, Bitcoin is attractive as it offers low transaction costs. He says Bitcoin offers an attractive alternative to cash in terms of security, transparency of transactions, and counterfeiting. He likes the fact that there's a finite supply of Bitcoins, and he believes that relative anonymity is advantageous to citizens of crisis countries. He says the winner-take-all market ensures that increasing acceptance and popularity of Bitcoin increases likelihood of success. I'll go into detail here. He says as Bitcoin becomes more popular, competitors will face higher barriers to entry, making it less likely they will be successful in supplanting Bitcoin's market share. For the disadvantages, he says Bitcoin's role as a store of value is seriously compromised by its elevated price volatility. To which I say, yeah, but when it gets bigger, it'll be less volatile. Here's one of the key disadvantages he mentions. Regulators could try to impose controls that would increase the transaction costs for using Bitcoin despite its efficiency and the transparency relative to cash. He goes on to say that firstly, the government is unlikely to want to promote a new currency that could be viewed as one that would help facilitate black market activities or tax evasion. As a result, regulators are currently thinking about how Bitcoin will fit into the broader payment and tax system and what makes sense in terms of regulation. The bottom line is that any new regulation will raise Bitcoin's transaction costs, offsetting and/or eliminating one of its main benefits. He says another disadvantage of Bitcoin is that the quality of Bitcoin exchange security, where customers exchange dollars for Bitcoins and vice versa, is suspect. And here's where he gets something wrong. He says, for Bitcoin users not able to mine their own Bitcoins, their only alternative is to exchange their local currency for Bitcoins at an exchange. And he's wrong about that. There's two other ways to get Bitcoin. One is exchange it with someone locally, not at an exchange, and or to sell something, a good or service for Bitcoin. Those are two other ways to get Bitcoin. He says another disadvantage of Bitcoin is a 50-minute wait before payment receipt confirmation is received will prohibit wider use. Actually, for smaller payments, though, it's not a big deal and you don't have to wait that long. Well, congratulations, David Wu. You're the guru on the Mad Money Machine Bitcoin Show pilot episode. Now a new segment I'm going to try, pulled from the headlines. It's shocking. The shocking headline goes like this: Central banks warn against Bitcoin. Another headline: Bitcoin use dangerous. Central Bank of Cyprus. Here's what former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan had to say when he was asked, is Bitcoin a bubble?
I guess so.
He went on to say that
currencies to be exchangeable have to be backed by something. You have to really stretch your imagination to infer what the intrinsic value of Bitcoin is. I haven't been able to do it. Maybe somebody else can. But if you ask me, is this a bubble in Bitcoin? Yeah, it's a bubble.
At which point, Ron Paul threw up a little bit in his mouth and said,
Mr. Greenspan said that he doesn't understand the intrinsic value of a Bitcoin, and quite frankly, I don't either. But I want to ask him, what about the intrinsic value of a dollar? Nobody knows what that is.
At which point, Greenspan shriveled up into a little ball of dust and blew away. But here's what the Cyprus Central Bank said. Using any virtual money is extremely dangerous because they're not monitored by any authority, thus operating without control. Are banks and central banks threatened by Bitcoin? Absolutely. And we know that those who are threatened by Bitcoin pose the biggest threat to Bitcoin. It's the battle of good versus evil. In the EU, the European Commissioner in charge of financial regulation said government penalties should apply if it emerges that unregulated currencies such as Bitcoin are being used to commit fraud or other criminal activities. We are following the question of Bitcoin very closely, said Michel Barnier. We remain vigilant and are ready to act if necessary. A report from the Bank of France said, even if Bitcoin does not today meet the conditions to become a credible means for investment that could therefore threaten financial stability, it represents a clear financial risk for those that hold it. In Argentina, the central bank there sent spies to the Bitcoin Foundation conference. And here's what the Washington Post had to say about Bitcoin, complaining about the volatility in relation to the dollar. They said, fortunately, there's a possible solution for Bitcoin's volatility problem. There needs to be some kind of central institution, a bank of sorts, one with the bottomless ability to either pump extra Bitcoin into the market or suck it out, depending on what's needed to maintain stable prices. With all that power, measures need to be taken to ensure that this Bitcoin overseer is independent and credible. Of course, you'll need somebody to run it, and if outgoing Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke doesn't get a job running a central bank for frequent flyer miles, as endorsed in this space a few weeks ago, maybe Bitcoiners can give him a call. Well, those who feel threatened by Bitcoin are the ones that pose the biggest threat to Bitcoin. What weapons will they use? They will try to strike fear into the hearts of man. They'll call it a bubble, a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme. It's used for money laundering and to buy illegal drugs, and it probably at some point it's used to finance terrorist organizations. They'll say it's insecure, it's risky, it's volatile, it's unregulated. People lose millions of dollars every day. They'll try to compete with it, like Chase, who filed for an electronic payment patent recently. They'll try to regulate it. They'll try to make laws against using Bitcoin. They'll try to shut down exchanges between Bitcoin and their currency. They'll spy, collude, and embed themselves. They'll co-opt it. They'll adopt Bitcoin. They'll provide enhanced services such as insurance guarantees, services, exchanges. Then they'll sabotage it. They'll manipulate it. Many speculate that banks already manipulate the gold and silver markets. We do not want them involved in Bitcoin. Stay away from Bitcoin. Leave us alone.
So the Central Bank of Argentina is seriously considering Bitcoin. Could you tell us more about this?
Well, they do. And indeed, during the conference, I have this nice lady, like 3 rows after the front of the conference, and she was mostly, she was from the early beginning of the conference until 4 p.m. And when we had a break, she approached me and he said, wonderful conference. I'm from the Central Bank of Argentina. I'm doing a report on Bitcoin. I congratulate you for the professional work you did with the conference and so on. And we are really interested in seeing how we can include this in our policies and how will Bitcoin interact with us. So that's, for me, a big step for Bitcoin. And of course, we need to keep with conversations. But that's an amazing milestone for Bitcoin in Argentina, for sure.
Diego Gutierrez Zaldivar, president of the Argentinian Bitcoin Foundation, thank you for spending some time with us today on Rare.
No, nothing good can come of that whatsoever. Here's Matthew Dowd on Bloomberg.
The problem that you ultimately have is, like Vegas is that the governments all depend on getting their share of the take. They get their share of the take of any transaction, whether it's a payroll transaction, an economic transaction, a purchase transaction. If cyber currency builds in momentum, how does government get its share of the take in order to build roads, to support government and all that? And that's ultimately a huge part of the problem. I think 10 years from now, the government is going to actually get in bed with the cyber currency folks.
No, stay away. We don't want your help, and we don't want to help you either. The Chinese central bank last week warned its financial institutions not to get involved in Bitcoin. Duncan Clark on Bloomberg was asked about this.
Why is the central bank doing this?
Well, the Communist Party, which controls basically the commanding heights of the Chinese economy, including the banking system, is concerned about alternative centers of power emerging in whatever area that might be. And digital currencies or virtual currencies is now one of those potential threats.
See, there he said it. Bitcoin is a threat to the central bank.
China maintains currency controls. The renminbi is not fully convertible. And Bitcoin has found tremendous purchase, no pun intended, in China, because it actually helps people get around some of these rules.
And for more about this, we go to Bloomberg once again and Hans Nichols in Berlin.
What we essentially have here is the Chinese central bank warning banks. They're warning financial institutions. They're saying to individuals, it's okay to continue trading in this, but banks can't get behind it. Here's what they actually restricted banks from doing: to give pricing on Bitcoin, to buy or sell Bitcoins themselves, or to insure Bitcoin-linked products. This is all according to a statement from the central bank's website. And what they're saying, as you mentioned, is that it isn't currency with real meaning. It's a virtual commodity. It doesn't have the same legal status as currency.
That is the desired outcome. Yes, we do not want you involved.
It seems like the next moves on Bitcoins are going to be coming from regulators, whether or not it's in China, whether it's in the States. But you do see with its value above $1,000, and it's been holding there on some exchanges, regulators may be forced or may just feel that they need to clamp down.
No, we don't want regulators to get involved, and we don't want the Senate getting involved either.
Well, you've seen a lot of information gathering, right? So in the Senate, there was a committee there that just looked at what a Bitcoin is, how it's created, what its individual intrinsic value is. Central banks, though, because they can regulate banking institutions, financial institutions in their own country, they have a little more authority. And since everything is so global, if you do see certain central banks clamping down, that may have spillover effects into U.S. markets, into South Asian markets, and potentially even global markets. So it does look like there is an opportunity to regulate this, or at least prevent it, from the central banks.
Regulate it or prevent it? What does prevent it mean from the central banks? Yes, we know banks all around the world are colluding, the central bank of this country and the central bank of that country. They're all getting together and they're all talking about, we've got to eliminate this Bitcoin threat. Here's Senator Ron Johnson on Bloomberg.
So on Bitcoin, do you expect that that Congress is going to take some legislative action on regulating Bitcoin?
I hope certainly not right away.
I hope certainly not ever.
I think at this point in time, the hearings to a certain extent legitimize these virtual transactions. And what we need to do here in Congress is we certainly need to be monitoring these things and trying to understand exactly where this is going to take us. But quite honestly, nobody really knows. I think there are many positive aspects of these online currencies or these virtual currencies, but there are also some dangers. So I think it's very appropriate to hold these hearings. I think we need to be aware of them. We need to monitor them. But I don't think, quite honestly, the federal government's going to be intelligent enough to figure out how to regulate them in any way, shape, or form.
Now that is a true statement.
It's just fascinating, and nobody really fully understands it right now.
But what's your biggest
except probably the creators.
Right. I don't even know if anybody understands exactly how it works and what the impact could be.
Dumb. Nobody understands how it works and what the impact could be. Really?
It's not regulated. You're really relying on this Bitcoin Foundation to totally monitor this themselves and make sure that it has some integrity.
No, we don't need you monitoring to see if it has integrity. It has all the trust and integrity it needs built into it mathematically. Now, in addition to central banks being threatened by Bitcoin, Western Union is threatened by Bitcoin. What did they have to say about it? They said, we will continue to track the use of virtual currency in the market and expect that it should comply with the same regulations and oversight that the rest of the financial services industry must adhere to ensure that customers are protected. In other words, we hope the government comes in and creates barriers for Bitcoin to make us more competitive with them. And we can't leave off without hearing from economist Paul Krugman, whose last name is pronounced Krugman, which ironically sounds like Krugerrand. He was asked by Business Insider, isn't Bitcoin just a digital version for gold cranks?
I basically think that it's a digital version for gold cranks, but I like you, it's hard not to be a little bit shaken when it goes on this long. And of course, we know that's always true of bubbles, right. But still, in principle, you can have assets which are considered valuable even though there is nothing backing them, right. Because self-fulfilling expectations. Now, we don't actually think that fiat money is like that, because right. That's backed ultimately by the fact that you can pay taxes with it.
Right. People always say that, like fiat, but it is
right. Fiat money is
real
fiat money, if you like, is backed by men with guns, right? Bitcoin is not. So why should this thing have any value? And of course, it doesn't pay interest. On the other hand, maybe the ability to do transactions that you think are invisible.
Right.
I wouldn't. After what we learned about the NSA, I wouldn't bet on it. But makes it something that people are willing to hold. So there is a case that says this actually might make sense. I very much doubt that case is what's actually driving the value of Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is being driven by the fact that it sounds impressive and people think there must be something there, but who knows?
So to summarize what he said there, it is a digital version for gold cranks. It's in a bubble. It's an asset without backing, unlike fiat, which is backed by taxes and guns. Bitcoin doesn't pay interest. Your invisible transactions might be monitored by the NSA, and what's driving Bitcoin is the fact that it sounds impressive. Now, to be fair, he did say that maybe Bitcoin makes sense. So to the list of those who feel threatened by Bitcoin, central banks, credit card companies, wire transfer companies, let's add one more. From the website bitcoinowl.com, Ivan Razzle has an article. Why can't you run Bitcoin apps on your iPhone? Well, in fact, you can run Bitcoin apps. You just can't run Bitcoin wallets or payments from your iPhone. He says Apple doesn't want Bitcoin to compete with their own upcoming payment system. That's his opinion. He says, I think Apple is preparing a fast, easy, and elegant payment solution for retailers and customers. With the fingerprint reader and the iBeacon, those technologies would create a frictionless payment system. He thinks it would be called iPay and would probably piggyback on the huge number of iTunes accounts with credit cards attached to them. He does say that it's important to note that even with Apple's restrictions on Bitcoin apps, you can still use your iPhone to send and receive Bitcoin. Even if you don't want to jailbreak your smartphone, you simply have to use a browser to log into your online wallet and send funds that way. It's not elegant or as fast as having a dedicated app, but it's a good solution for now. He says another option is to ditch the iPhone and get an Android device instead that runs Bitcoin's wallets freely. Once again, the bottom line is those who are threatened by Bitcoin are the ones that pose the biggest threat to Bitcoin. They have lots of power, but potentially we have lots of people. So I say, power to the people. Be on guard against the evil threat. This will be the battle of the century, and we will continue to monitor the headlines, which of course will continue to be shocking. Let's take a minute to look at the market in Bitcoins. I'm recording this show on Thursday, December 12th. Normally you get the show the day I record it. But at the moment, millibitcoins are trading at about 90 cents. The weekly high was $1.15, and the weekly low is about 57 cents. So we had some pretty big swings this past week, as you recall. The market cap at that price is about $10.4 billion, and the total number of Bitcoins in existence, 12.07 million. The average time between blocks, about 8.5 minutes. That's your Market Minute. Let's pull something out of the Madman Machine Bitcoin tool crib. Well, it is the holiday season, so Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and for about 1/12 of you, Happy Birthday Month. And I'm sure if it's not your birthday month, you probably know somebody whose birthday month it is. So it is time for gift giving all around. And what better gift than the gift of Bitcoins? And you don't want to just give a nasty old plain paper wallet to someone. You want to give them a holiday-themed paper wallet. That's why you need to go out to bitcoinpaperwallet.com. Then click on the holiday generator to print out on two sides that beautiful paper wallet that you can load up with Bitcoins and give to that loved one of yours for this festive season. Of course, the gift of Bitcoin is the gift that keeps on giving. Once you've given them the paper wallet, you can then instruct them all about Bitcoin, teach them how to generate an online wallet, teach them how to spend those Bitcoins, and teach them how to give Bitcoins to their friends as well. So if you're thinking of buying a gift card, give them a Bitcoin wallet instead. It's a great conversation piece, and they'll feel like they're a member of the club. BitcoinPaperWallet.com. It's Mad Money Machine's Bitcoin Tool of the Week. And like the best things in life, it's free.
The best things in life are free. You can keep it rolling. Birds and bees knocking me money. Money. That's what I want.
Here's some other quick take Bitcoin headlines. Coinbase raises $25 million in Bitcoin's biggest ever funding deal. And Coinbase named number 2 in Time Magazine's top 10 exciting startups. What was number 1? Snapchat. ZipZap to offer cash for Bitcoin service at 28,000 UK locations. That'll help people get in and out of Bitcoins. And some guy throws his hard drive away worth $7 million or so on it. Also this week, Bitcoin QT 0.8.6, the original Satoshi Bitcoin client, was released. Download it now for your Windows, Mac, and Linux. Oh, by the way, if you run the original client, open port 8333 on your router to allow more than 8 connections. Otherwise, I'm told you're a freeloader on the net. And finally, in the headlines, there's some guy in London that will sell you a burger for Bitcoins. These are all headlines, but there was the story about the guy that created Bitcoins a long time ago, then kind of forgot about it, left it sitting there on his computer. And then when the Bitcoin price started going up to $1,000 per Bitcoin recently, or $1 per millibitcoin, he realized, hey, wait a minute, I've got some Bitcoins somewhere. And he typed in his password and it didn't work. Typed in his password and it didn't work. Tried all combinations of passwords for days and days and nothing worked to unlock his private key. Until one morning he woke up and realized, I forgot to put an exclamation point. He ran downstairs, typed in the exclamation point, and ding! $25,000 worth of Bitcoin appeared in his wallet. Lesson is, don't forget your password. Well, I am just thrilled, I tell you, that I found a new purpose for the Mad Money Machine podcast. I've been looking for a new reason to get into podcasting, and Bitcoin is the key. I would love to be part of the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast network and do this every week, bringing a lot of fun and information to Bitcoin users everywhere. Pass a link to the show along to someone who doesn't know anything at all about Bitcoin, and we will all learn more and more about it together as the weeks go on. And that's it for this, the pilot episode of the Mad Money Machine, the Bitcoin Show. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll consider voting for it to be added to the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. We're going to have a lot of fun. This is Paul Boyer saying it takes money to make money, and it takes Bitcoin to make a Mad Money Machine. You can email me, bitcoin@madmoneymachine.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit as Mad Money Machine. In the meantime, buy some Bitcoin and spend some Bitcoin. Let's fight the good fight and win the battle of the century.
Thanks for listening. To vote for this one, visit letstalkbitcoin.com/P3 and send 0.1 millibits to the address indicated.